Welcome, welcome to the best part of this teacher training, which is learning the lazy monkey yoga style, really learning it, the technique of it, how to practice it, and then how to teach it, how to share this technique with other people. Very exciting. I think that you're going to enjoy this process very much. You're going to enjoy it as much as I enjoy teaching it. And the reason why is because the lazy monkey yoga style is so easy. It's such an easy, laid back, and relaxed practice. It is highly achievable to most people. So what I'm going to go ahead and tell you from the get-go here about this module, Level 1, Module 1, and Module 2 is all about the earth and foundation. It is about the foundation of the practice, which is why it is the most important and the most crucial part of getting started in this style. We are going to be talking about modifications for people who are expecting prenatal, postpartum. We're going to be talking about modifications for an older population like the elderly or people who might be more fragile. We're going to be talking about modifications for people who have health problems and conditions. We're going to be talking about modifications a lot later on in the program. Right now, it is not crucial to start talking about modifications. You need to know how to teach the class the way it is supposed to be taught, and the class is achievable for most all people. Even if they have some kind of health condition, the practice is really laid back, it's really easy, and generally safe for most all populations, which is what's beautiful about it. It's highly adaptable to different circumstances and to different populations. Someone who's young, someone who's fit, someone who loves yoga is going to love this class because it is about breathing, feeling, listening to the body, becoming embodied, and recognizing the body as a temple for the spirit and allowing the spirit to settle and rest. It's an easy practice. It's actually a good practice for people who are very active and need something else, need a more passive style of yoga and stretching to complement, let's say, running or playing tennis or playing football or whatever. So this class has a very specific vibe, is taught a very specific way, and the sequences are always performed in a certain way. I think that's going to be another very important point for you to realize. You're learning how to teach a lazy monkey level 1, level 2 class over the next couple of modules, and then we'll get into more advanced lazy monkey later on. You will learn most all of the postures by the end of the 200 hours, both beginner and advanced. I'm not going to not teach you advanced postures. You will learn those too. But for a level 1 lazy monkey yoga class that you would teach to the general population and not a population that requires special care, this is what we're going to be practicing for the next 2 modules. And we're specifically focusing on the element of earth, and we're focusing on the foundation of the practice. There's a very important thing that I want to add right now about my requirement for you being able to receive your certificate at the end of this program. There's a very important part that I want you to remember and take notes on, and that is the verbal cueing. Verbal cueing meaning what you're going to say to people when you're actually teaching. When I teach the Lazy Monkey Yoga class, I use very specific verbal cues to get the students in and out of the postures. Very specific verbal cues. And I'm going to expect you to also use my verbal cues when teaching this class. You will have to demonstrate that when you make YouTube videos for me that are listed, unlisted videos. You're going to have a YouTube channel for yourself. You're going to have to create that for me to be able to watch you teach, obviously to prove your competency. And when you're actually doing video instruction for me, as I'm doing for you, I'm going to require that you use the verbal cues to specifically set up the postures. So I'm going to, as we go along through all of these postures and sequences, I will be specifically telling you the language that I want you to use when setting up a posture. Okay, so being able to communicate verbally is very, very important. Communication is ridiculously important as when you're teaching, when you're an instructor. And I don't mean saying, it's not really about stuttering or not being able to find the right words sometime, but it's about being clear when you're setting people up to do a posture, because obviously you're responsible for their safety. Okay, so you have to be very verbally clear with people about what it is that you want them to do and how you want to perform a posture. There's not a lot of manual adjusting in Lazy Monkey Yoga. What do I mean by manual adjustment? A manual adjustment would be where a yoga teacher is walking around in a yoga class and putting their physical hands on someone's body and manipulating the body to try to push it further, either into a posture or to correct some kind of alignment. For the most part, in a Lazy Monkey level 1, level 2 class, you should not ever have to manually adjust by touching a student, because the postures are very easy to set up, they're very easy to transition through, and if you are verbally communicating properly, the student is going to completely understand what you're saying, and you're not going to have to go over and move their foot or tell them that they need to put their hand here or they need to put their hand here, because your verbal cues are going to be super clear. So verbal cueing is going to be a very, very, very big thing for me. Another thing I want to put out there is that, don't teach something that you can't do. Don't try to teach people postures or sequences or highly complicated stuff if you don't know how to do it yourself and you don't feel comfortable doing it. I used to be able to say, I used to tell people, if you're a good instructor, you don't necessarily have to be able to demonstrate every single pose and posture. That is true. But it takes a long time and a lot of practice teaching many, many classes and many, many different types and kinds of bodies in order to get very proficient at, is what I'm saying. Proficient at being able to guide somebody through postures that you can't necessarily perform. So I don't want you to get stressed out thinking that you're going to have to be teaching people headstands and handstands and stuff if you're not capable of doing a headstand or a handstand. It's not like that. You will run into highly athletic people that come to your class and some of your more advanced classes that want to do those things. And what's going to be important for you to be able to do is spot those people. Okay, so as far as manual adjustment is concerned, there's not a lot of manual adjustment where you're going to be going over and trying to force someone into a posture. That's not the philosophy, remember? Our philosophy is that people are going to evolve organically. Their body is going to adjust and move and correct itself, self-correct itself, and build strength by itself on its own without your interference. Okay, the body has to self-regulate and adjust on its own. That's why we don't get into people's personal space. If we are getting into someone's personal space, it's usually because we are spotting that person if they're in some kind of hand balance or handstand. That is not something you have to worry about today. That is something that we will be talking about later on in the program. We're keeping it very simple, and we're starting with the foundation. So, how do we set up a lazy monkey yoga style class? We set up the class and we set up every single posture and sequence from the bottom up. This is a crucial principle. The second principle that is the most important that you need to remember, besides your verbal cueing and communication, number 2 is how you set up the postures and how you set up the sequences. We build all of our postures from the ground, the floor, the earth, up. As an example, in level 1, level 2 lazy monkey yoga practice that we teach to the general public, we always begin the class in a seated position like this, easy seated pose with the legs crossed. We begin and we finish in this posture, okay? So when I'm sitting in this posture, I'm thinking about my sits bones, I'm thinking about my butt, I'm feeling my base, the trunk of my body anchored to the earth. From the thighs and the pelvis and the hips and the entire pelvic bowl being supported by the earth, I'm able to focus on my spine. And just like the trunks of a tree, my body is anchored to the earth. My upper body should be able to move freely. These are the branches of my tree, my arms, my head, my shoulders. I should feel anchored and grounded in the earth, in my pelvis and in my sits bones. But my torso should be free to move, to twist, to bend from side to side, forward. Okay, the neck, the head should be able to fully release itself in your forward fold, in your side lateral flexion. So the foundation is very, very crucially important that you set that up from the get-go. As an example, I'm going to stand up and I hope that you can see my head or my face. If we're doing any kind of posture, any lunges or any standing postures, the focus is on the feet, spreading the toes, grounding the heels, and feeling the entire foot on the earth, feeling strong and anchored in the legs. Okay, the foundation. If I'm standing on one foot, doing some kind of balance, okay, I'm focusing on my ankle. I'm focusing on the foot, obviously, feeling connected to the earth. I'm shifting my vertical axis on top of the leg that's going to be supporting my body, and I'm focusing on the ankle, because what you're going to find most of the time with standing balances is people's ankles are weak, and that's why they fall over. It might not be because they don't have good balance. It could be most of the time because the ankle is unstable, unsteady, because we're not used to balancing on one foot. Or the ankle will become fatigued very quickly. The ankles become fatigued, and then everything starts to fall apart. And when you see someone's postures in yoga falling apart, it's because the foundation is weak. The foundation is weak, and when the foundation breaks, everything from the bottom up comes crashing down. Seems reasonable, right? Seems logical that you would do that. But that's actually not something that a lot of people think about when they're teaching yoga. And that principle of building your postures from the bottom up applies to every single style of yoga. That's not just unique to Lazy Monkey. You can apply that principle to any Hatha yoga style that you teach. Okay. When we're on the ground and we're doing hand balances, and that's going to be more advanced later on, when we're doing hand balances on close to the earth, we're still focused on the earth. We're still focused on the hand position and spreading the fingers and pressing the entire palm into the earth and building that hand balance or that handstand from the wrist to the elbow to the shoulders. Okay, once again, from the bottom up. Whatever part of the body is touching the earth is the most important part of the body for anchoring the pose. So this class is specifically designed for most everyone. And like I said before, the Lazy Monkey Yoga style class is accessible to most all people. Young people who want to have a break from vigorous exercise, and older people who are not ready to walk into a very active class that requires them to get up and down and up and down and up and down off the ground. So because of the way this class is choreographed, it is a choreographed flow. And I found this out when I started teaching older people and men specifically. This class actually developed from a lot of work that I've done with men, older men, between the ages of 50 and 75. What I found is that older people tend to be highly irritated in exercise classes that require them to constantly get up and down off the ground, up and down off the ground. That's very difficult to a lot of people. It's incredibly fatiguing, especially if you're, overweight or you're carrying extra weight. That's tough. So the level 1, the most basic, which is my favorite thing to teach, the most basic version of the Lazy Monkey Yoga class, if you're teaching, oh my God, my stomach just got hungry. If you're teaching a 60-minute long class, then you're going to be breaking that 60 minutes up into probably 4 15-minute long sessions. And where the first 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes of your practice is going to be in the seated position. When we sit down in seated position, we do all the postures and all the qigong and all the breathing exercises and movement in the seated position. Once the seated position postures are over, then we move to prone, laying down on our abdomen, or supine, laying down on our back, or standing, and then we do all of the postures in prone, and then we do all the postures in supine, and we do all the postures that are standing postures. So it's a progressive choreographed flow where we start with the foundation, seated, and then after we do the entire beginning sequence, when we're doing that, then we can mix it up. You might want to do more postures, standing postures, than, let's say, prone postures where you're laying face down on your abdomen. Obviously, that's going to be important when you're teaching pre- and postnatal people and people who are expecting, right? Laying down on the abdomen, that's not a good thing. So all those modifications will come later. But you might decide that you want to do more standing postures, or maybe you want to work more on core strength. So you're going to spend more time supine, laying on your back and doing more abdominal work, okay? So the class is pretty much designed that we're going to hit all of the postures while we are there. We're already seated, we're going to do everything seated. We're already standing, we're going to do everything standing. So you understand that's how this class progresses. And it makes it easy. It makes it easy on you as an instructor, and it also makes it easy on the students. It's easy to remember. It can be very, very easy to remember the flows when you look at it like that. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take a break, and then when I come back, we're going to start breaking down the actual postures.